And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports, represented by T. Scott Jones. Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
Hey, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. A loaded show. Tony Jones will join us, the former associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee under Bruce Pearl and at Auburn under Bruce Pearl. We'll get his thoughts on Tennessee making a run to the SEC championship game and how that might affect them in the NCAA tournament, as technically it begins on Tuesday, but let's be real. It's noon on Thursday. That's when the thing starts. So there we go. We're not going to go ahead and play that play-in game. I'm not going to be caught by that. We've got a lot to get to on the program today. Also, Nico Iamaleava said on a podcast he expected a natty last year. I don't know what team he was watching, but I didn't think Tennessee was anywhere close. We'll discuss that. Awful SEC officiating and NCAA officiating. Now, I don't think that it's contrived in any shape, form, or fashion, so we're not going to go down that road. But the fact that the officiating is inconsistent in March, how does that affect the Vols and their defensive-minded approach? This day in Tennessee sports history, Deion Sanders, yet again, speaks the truth. I know that some of you don't like Deion Sanders, but what he said while at Colorado has come to fruition, and he's got some insight on a spring game that I just absolutely love. What is better, March Madness or the college football playoff? I think that one's kind of easy, but Caleb brought it up, so he must have a different point. Stat of the day as well, and why Rick Barnes should retire after this season. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
Oh, super tremendous, Dave. How are you doing?
Never better. Does the NCAA tournament begin on Tuesday or Thursday in your mind?
I like to think Thursday, just like everybody else, but these play-in games annoy me because there have been a couple of play-in teams actually make a run at the Final Four, including Tennessee being a bad charging call away from the Elite Eight as a play-in team back in 2014 during the Conzo Martin years. So that's kind of the only thing that kind of throws me off about this. I don't really like play-in games, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think they should have them. I think 64 is enough. If you're going to do play-in games, just do 4 16 seeds, on Tuesday and Wednesday. Stop this ratings grab that they're trying to do.
Well, and I will just go ahead and tell you right now, I was told by a very, 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 very good source that whether you like it, whether or not I like it, whether or not those out there watching or listening like it, it's going to be 90 teams sooner rather than later.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
It's going to bounce up to 76, I was told, and then it's going to be 90. And really, you and I are sports fans, and we want the sanctity of the sport, but we're also in marketing. We bring more people to, let's say, Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, or the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. You can get them on Parkside Drive or Kingston Pike. So we're also in marketing. What does the NCAA have when it comes to basketball to market other than the NCAA tournament? I don't know how you would even begin to market the regular season and get people to feel strongly about that, Caleb. I just think that ship has sailed.
I agree. And this is why I wanted to compare the NCAA tournament to March Madness or the college football playoff, which we'll get to, because I am a very big believer that there is a perfect number of expansion where you have just enough teams to make the regular season matter, but you don't want too many where it turns into March Madness. Because I'm sorry, the real story of March Madness and the excitement of the 3 weeks is really based on how unexciting the rest of the year is in college basketball and how little people care about it.
Nope, I can't argue with that. Let's get to the NCAA tournament right now. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Today's tough question is this. Wofford is a 19.5-point underdog to Tennessee. Can Wofford beat the Vols? Caleb?
I honestly don't think it's possible for Wofford to beat the Vols. I'm just going to say it. I'll say it up front. They are a decent shooting team, but they shoot 34%. And way they play is they actually play an inside-out style of basketball, Dave, that you would expect from a Power 5 team. But they play it with 4 guards. Okay, they have 4 guards, and they play inside-out with 4 guards, and they have one 6'9" player in Kyler Filowich, who is 6'9", 250. They are going to, and I'm dead serious on this. I've told you I was worried about Purdue's size affecting Tennessee yesterday. Purdue has 2 bigs. Wofford has one that they run at different times to try to play inside out. That's not gonna work for that's not gonna work against Tennessee because Felix Opera can shut down one guy who's not athletic. He's 6'9", 250, Dave. I mean, and we're about to make a few more jokes about him in a second, but we'll save that for first. I just want to point out that Wofford they're just again, they try to win by grinding it out. How are you going to grind it out against the king of grinded out teams in Tennessee basketball if you're a mid-major? That's just not a good matchup.
The whole region's pretty much grinded out, which I think helps Tennessee. But you're absolutely wrong. Let me tell you why. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, I got some juice this morning, by the way, Caleb, because I didn't make the gym, but I've still had the same amount of caffeine. So get ready as I just absolutely explode through your computer. Today's tough question: does Wofford have a shot? Caleb, you say no. I got 2 words for you. Why Wofford has a shot. It's Rick Barnes. And I've got 2 more words for you. It's Tennessee basketball. I've discussed this with so many people. Who are you most afraid of in Tennessee's region as they try to make the Final Four? As so many people, including I believe I heard Seth Greenberg of ESPN predict Tennessee to make the Final Four. But the bottom line is this defensive-minded region is good for Tennessee, but it's also going to result in some close games, I would think. And at that point, I believe that the pressure of Rick Barnes trying to break into his second Final Four, he's been coaching since 1970, that pressure will mount on the Vols. So I think Wofford has every opportunity to beat Tennessee. I don't think it'll happen. I think Tennessee will win by 10 or 12. I would not take the points, but I'm not a gambler either, Caleb. But as long as you got Rick Barnes on the sideline, I kind of remember it was Jim Herrick said, referring to Jerry Green, as long as you've got the silver fox pacing the sidelines, you've got a chance. Talking about Jerry Green with his arms crossed, he said, as long as Rick Barnes is the head coach, I think Tennessee has to be one of those teams that you look at, much like Kelvin Sampson, who's made a couple of Final Fours at Houston, but had a vacate one. I think Kelvin Sampson struggles sometimes to get out of the first round. Mark Pope has struggled to get out of the first round. I think as long as you've got Rick Barnes as your head coach, you've always got to be wary of an early exit from the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, early exit and first round loss as a 2 seed are 2 different things, to be fair. And that's not – Rick Barnes has underachieved in the tournament. He has. His lowest first round loss, if I'm not mistaken, his lowest seeded first round loss. I believe it came in 2002 as a number 6, in 2000 as a number 2001 as a number 6 seed. So while Rick Barnes does oftentimes flame out in the NCAA tournament, and you are not lying there, he doesn't do it as a 2 seed. Okay, he gets his guys because the way, how do you lose as a 2 seed, Dave? If you lose as a 2 seed or a 1 seed, you're taking the day off, right? That's the only time 2 and 1 seeds lose. They're thinking about the next opponent.
Or the other team gets red hot from 3.
That's for 6-11 games. That's not for 2-15 games. 2-15 or 1-16 is the 2 seed or the 1 seed literally took the day off. And Dave, Zakai Zeigler,
when you say taking the day off, I mean, that's an elimination game. Are you saying looking forward to a potential matchup with Kentucky or looking forward?
Yes, they're looking ahead to the second round and the third round, and they just look, it's hard. I get it's an elimination game, but you know this, Dave, even in elimination games with college kids, sometimes they're so sure they're going to win, they still don't show up the way they should. And but Rick Barnes teams get upset a lot in the NCAA tournament, Dave, but it's never an effort problem or it's never a focus problem. It's just kind of they're grinded down and they have offensive issues and all of that. Wofford is they play inside out. They slow the pace. They play an extremely slow pace. And you would theoretically be scared that they could go get hot from 3 because they shoot 34% on the year and 38% of their shots are 3-pointers. So what they do is they either feed the rock inside to Kyler Filowich, who's averaging 12 points and 10 rebounds on the year. And if they collapse on him, they kick it out and they find somebody, one of their 4 guards, to shoot a 3. That's literally their game. It's an inside out game. Dave, has Wofford ever been tested by a defense like Tennessee's to contest all their 3-point shots? And they're only shooting 34% from 3.
Now, I could see Wofford scoring 45 and Tennessee scoring 65, and that would cover the spread. But I don't know that I trust Tennessee to score 65 points. You've taken a long look at this Wofford team. What else stands out? Unsung says, did Rick turn down an interview with Dave throwing heat, David? That's just the facts. And you're talking to the same guy who said that Tennessee should give him a lifetime contract, and I still believe that. But Caleb, that doesn't mean that Tennessee suddenly needs to say, "Hey, March is ours," because it hasn't been, with or without Rick Barnes. It seems like Tennessee has always been cursed in the NCAA tournament.
Well, they have, but not as a 2 seed in the first round. And I'm going to give you first of all, I'm calling it right now. Wofford's not breaking 50. They are not breaking 50. It's not happening. I'll bet on that right now. They will not break 50. And one reason.
Show.
I'm sorry.
Shirtless show. That's the bet.
No, I don't have my packs yet. They are not breaking.
Yeah, you're like 35. When are you going to get them?
I'm going to start on that. They are okay. Wofford is not breaking 50. I'm just telling you guys that up front. They're not breaking 50. The biggest reason is their big man in this inside-out game they play, Kyler Filowich, shoots 31.8% from the free throw line, and I am going to share with you guys the fact that he also shoots granny style from the free throw line. I kid you not. This is their big man, Kyler Filowich, okay? The guy that they go through for the inside-out play. Look at this. Here we go. Check it out. And boom. Yeah, that's who Tennessee is playing.
That one didn't go in, but why do you have an issue with that?
If Tennessee loses to a team whose primary big man shoots granny style from free throws, they should never be allowed back in the NCAA tournament again. Wofford was not a legitimate tournament style team. They were the 6th seed in the Southern Conference tournament. You know, teams Dave, those like mid-major teams that are really bad, but they like get hot in their conference tournament so they get the automatic bid.
Yes.
That's Wofford. They're not a good team. They're a bad basketball team. And again, I'm just going to say it. Tennessee should destroy them.
Okay, here we go. Unsung has a good bet that we could do. So
that was disgusting. No.
You won't do mayo in the coffee again?
No, I won't do mayo in the coffee again.
Okay. We'll discuss what we can do if Wofford breaks 50. I tend to think they will break 50. Now, listen, Derek brings it up. Rick Barry did that. Wilt Chamberlain did that, the underhanded free throw.
Yeah, and what happened when Wilt Chamberlain went up against Bill Russell and the Celtics?
Well, the Celtics beat him. Bill Russell didn't beat him.
Okay, well, wait. One, General Ursa says, who cares if he shoots granny style as long as it goes in the basket? Hey, General Ursa, it doesn't go in the basket. He's 31.8% from the free throw line.
That is, I will give you that. That changes things a little bit. If he were like a 70% free throw shooter and he was doing it granny style, I would say good for him. Nice to set the ego aside. We don't all have to be these tough men, these Ray Allen shooters. And let's face it, the reason more people don't do granny style is because of the machismo, right? Isn't it because, hey, I'm a man, I'm going to shoot like a man?
Maybe it is, but you bring up, it's also not effective. You bring up Wilt Chamberlain. He shot 51% from the free throw line. He was a liability for all of his stats. He was a liability from the free throw line. That's why the Celtics would beat him all the time. I mean, the dude straight up disappeared in the 1969 NBA Finals, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote about that and just trashed him. So yeah,
but he did sleep with 20,000 women. So
yeah, maybe if he slept,
wasn't that maybe his legs were tired? We had a friend actually in high school that we wouldn't allow to go see his girlfriend on game day because we swore that if he went and saw her after school and before the game, that he had dead legs when he played. That is
really
true. We would not allow him. Now, his girlfriend was the most attractive girl in our class. So that was tough to keep him away.
Weren't there boxers that used to like set up
refrain from? Yes.
No, they would set up prostitutes to entrap their opponents from the night before the game.
No, I thought I've never heard that. No, boxers used to refrain from sexual activity because it built up their testosterone, theoretically. Don't you remember Rocky? No, Adrian, I'm training. Yeah, remember? Adrian's trying to get a little frisky. No, Adrian, I'm serious now. I'm serious.
Okay. Well, what? So Kyler Filowich, this 6'9", 250-pound slow white dude who shoots granny style from free throw line. Dave is saying, Kyler, stay out of the bedroom. Stay out of the bedroom the night before you play Tennessee, and then maybe Wofford has a chance.
Well, especially day of. Now, boxers used to do it 6 weeks before. I don't know how in the hell they did that.
I'm sorry. If I'm Kyler Filowich, Kyler, and I'm not just saying this because we're a Tennessee side, because we're just covering things. I'm just going to give you advice. Kyler, you're not winning this game. Your team has no chance. Enjoy the trip to Lexington for the NCAA tournament and pick up every woman you possibly can and say, I'm playing in the NCAA tournament tomorrow. Because by the time they see you play, nobody will want to be around you.
Now, Derek points out that he leads the league in assists as a center. So what we're going to do now, today's tough question, we're going to adjust that a little bit. So I officially want your prediction. How far does Tennessee go in the NCAA tournament? I didn't ask you on Monday. We've had a chance to digest it, but I'll tell you where I think Tennessee finishes after 30 seconds from Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones, Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks & Jones.
All right, Caleb, let me ask you, where are you? What do you think of this Tennessee basketball team? Your official prediction. I don't want your whole bracket. Just how deep does Tennessee go?
They're going to the Final Four.
You know, you are the second person to say that I respect. Will West said that. I sat in for Tyler Ivins on the Sports Animal from 3 to 7 on Monday, and Will West firmly believes that Tennessee is going to the Final Four. Seth Greenberg believes that Tennessee is going to the Final Four, saying they're due on the Dan Patrick show. I believe Tennessee makes it to the Elite Eight. I believe they play Houston, and Houston out Tennessee's Tennessee. They are slightly better defensively. Not slightly. They're number 1 in the nation. Tennessee is around number 9. They play a similar style. And I think what's going to happen, I'm going to be really specific in my prediction. I didn't ask you to do this, but here's where I am. I think it comes down to the final 2 minutes. It's a close game, and Tennessee realizes the pressure and gets tight. Let me ask you this. If it's a close game against Houston, how worried should Tennessee fans be that the Vols get tight in that game?
Not at all. I think Houston would get just as tight. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. I think we should. I think you should change your name to Dave Sampson, because I think you have a crush on Kelvin Sampson because you're just so protective of Houston and what they've done. And I'm just here to tell you guys, if Tennessee gets to Houston, they're winning that game. I'm telling you straight up, they're beating Houston. I have no concern for Houston if I'm Tennessee. I'm much more scared if I'm Tennessee of Purdue or Kentucky than I am Houston. I'm telling you that. Sorry, they are. Tennessee plays Houston. They will have way more fans in Indianapolis for that game. They match up so well against Houston. You aren't going to grind out Tennessee, particularly from the perimeter. Tennessee's out, particularly with the guards. I'm sorry. Tennessee is going to absolutely win that game if they play Houston. That doesn't mean they're a lock for the Final Four, because, again, if they play Purdue, I think they're in trouble again. But I do think if they play Houston, they have the advantage. They have the matchup edge. I'll call it right now. Tennessee might beat Houston by 10 points if the two face off.
Wow.
Yeah. Give Tennessee Houston. They are going, if they get to Houston, they're going to the Final Four, and everybody should be excited. It's happening. It's happening. They're headed there, guys. I'm sorry. They are.
Okay. Will West, who I respect, has them losing to Florida actually in the championship game. So do you have them advancing to the championship game or just making the Final Four? How deep are you going? I haven't completed my bracket, but that is where I will have Tennessee.
I just have the Final Four. I think that, look, there are matchup advantages. Florida is a big matchup problem for Tennessee, but I also think if Tennessee runs into Duke or Alabama in the Final Four, I'm sorry, I think Duke or Alabama is going to beat Tennessee in the Final Four. I mean, Alabama matches up well. I know Tennessee beat Alabama in the regular season. That was a home game that, as you know, Dave, was kind of a fluky sort of end to the game with the Jemai Mashak half-court shot and all that. So I don't see, unless there is a Cinderella team in the East bracket, I think Tennessee is going to get bounced out in the Final Four. I'll say this, though. Duke's the 1 seed. Tennessee should root for them because I think they'd rather play Duke than Alabama in the Final Four.
It's funny how you phrased it. If there's a Cinderella, there's really only been 1 year that there hasn't been a Cinderella. Was it 1 year that all ones made it? This is about
2008.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there will be a Cinderella. Our Houston scenario or Alabama scenario probably won't happen, but that's what's great about the NCAA tournament, even if it's a little gimmicky.
It's ridiculously gimmicky.
Ridiculously gimmicky. I don't think so. I kind of like it. Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank coming up as we will take a look at the officiating. Does it help or hurt Tennessee in their defensive style? First, 30 seconds from Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in.
All right, Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. Bank on it. The officiating will be horrible. That's just March, isn't it? It was awful in the SEC tournament. It's perennially awful in the NCAA tournament. Can we both agree that the officiating will be horrible, Caleb?
It will be abysmal because officials, we always say March Madness that's the one shining moment for the player or team to make a run. It's the one shining moment for the officials.
That's well said. I kind of figured out where you were going before you even said it. I hadn't thought about that. It is one shining moment for the officials. And other than Major League Baseball umpires, basketball officials have the biggest ego of all sports.
insane ego. And you're right. I never thought about that. MLB umpires do have a massive ego.
They're the worst. You look at me wrong and I'll throw you out of a game.
Yeah, you're right. And no, my favorite is MLB umpires are the only ones that like they have to do the gigantic motion to throw you out. You know what I mean? Like you're out of there. And it's like they want everybody to know I threw you out. Like
it's so bizarre. I was an umpire when I was a teenager, and for me to be a 17-year-old and throw a 35-year-old man out of a game, which I did a couple of times, was pretty odd. I mean, it was a very strange dynamic there. Here's a 17-year-old guy saying you have to leave the property, which they did. They had to leave the entire thing. I think the officiating, bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank, actually hurts Tennessee because they like to play physical. Caleb disagrees. Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life.
Caleb, Tennessee likes to play physical, and if there's a quick whistle, I think it hurts the Vols. I think the chances are officiating will hurt the Vols. Now, don't go down the path of, not you, but our listeners and in the chat box, and we'll go to that. Don't go down the path of the officials are against Tennessee, because officials don't really care for the most part. They can get caught up in the moment, which happens a lot in basketball. A team goes on a run, and then suddenly you don't even realize it. And I've been in this situation before, Caleb. When you see somebody rally and make a run, you can subconsciously, as an official, get caught up in that. But so that could happen. The officiating could just be bad. We're not saying it's contrived against Tennessee, but we think the officiating will be horrible. You think that could actually help the Vols?
I do. And yeah, for those who be careful what you wish for when you draw official conspiracy theories, like conspiracy theories of against officials for or against your team, because to this day, Dave, Syracuse fans think the only reason that pass interference was called against Tennessee in the 98 game was because the official who called it was from East Tennessee. By the way, forget the video footage that shows that was an obvious pass interference on that final drive.
Back in 98. I don't know that it was obvious. It was a bang call, but it was definitely pass interference.
He was hit before the ball got to him, put it that way. And yeah, so I just wanted to point that out. I think it helps Tennessee for a couple of reasons. One, and I'm kind of going to contradict what I said yesterday. If there's one benefit for playing all three games in the SEC tournament, Tennessee got used to over officiating. SEC tournament officiating this past weekend, I mean, that was their one shining moment. It was embarrassing. They called everything. I mean, Felix Opera got called for 2 fouls in both days that were not fouls. It was absolutely abysmal. I think that just for the record, Dave, in every game Tennessee played, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Tennessee and the team Tennessee played had more fouls than their season average per game. Now, that's 6 times. You know, Tennessee 3 times and then their opponent 3 times. What are the chances that all 6 times you get more fouls than your season average per game?
Oh, well, you shouldn't. I mean, the chances are very low.
Insanely low. And Tennessee proved against that they can make it to the SEC tournament title game. Here's the other part. I think a quick whistle helps Tennessee because you're thinking about them on the defensive side. What about the offensive side? Look at what Zakai Zeigler does and how they go to the paint. How often does Tennessee's offense try to draw contact in the paint? Particularly Zeigler, Meshack. I'm just going to tell you guys this. This is the tournament where forget Chaz Lanier, forget Igor Milicic. Zeigler should be driving to the basket. That should be the fun. That should be the root of the offense this game. Now, you would bring up So just to bring up John Calipari, for instance, one of the reasons Calipari underachieved so badly in the NCAA tournament, the dribble drive is the perfect type of offense in the NCAA tournament because it gets you to the foul line. The problem with John Calipari and the dribble drive is his players don't hit their free throws. But Zakai Zeigler will hit his free throws. He should be driving to the basket every single time because you know the minute someone gets in his way, they're going to call the foul and he's going to go to the line. So I think the way Tennessee likes to draw contact on offense is going to put them, they might shoot 40 free throws in a game. I mean, it could go that crazy.
Well, the flip side is this. While I do believe it will be over officiated, it could just be poorly officiated. And I do wonder if the fact that Rick Barnes is on the sideline and he knows how to work officials, just like Rick Pitino, or there's a couple other mentions of great coaches that are in this tournament. I think he knows how to work the officials. And I think he has more pull than, I don't even know who Wofford's head coach is. So to your point, you would think that the officiating would favor Tennessee, given the fact that Rick Barnes is a savvy coach who can work an official.
Yes, I agree. You would absolutely think it would favor him. I'm not worried about, I'm not thinking about this from the Wofford game. I'm thinking about it when you get to like the next round or to the Sweet 16, around that time, who works the officials better. Look, I've already told you guys, you can wake up and Tennessee can get drunk the night before and play that game hungover. They're winning. I'm just going to say it. Like, Wofford should pack up and go home just so they don't get humiliated. So,
Ouch.
yeah.
All right. David saying, I'm concerned a very physical game that foul trouble is our kryptonite with poor guard depth and no post depth. That's the other thing that we haven't really discussed that kind of flies in the face of what you said. And that is, if Tennessee is in a physical game in which the refs are calling things too closely, they don't have great depth to overcome. But I wouldn't think Wofford does either.
No, I don't think they do. And I think as you get deeper, that's where coaching comes into play. And maybe this has been a flaw on Rick Barnes as he doesn't change his style. There's a great, this is one of the things that made Pat Summitt a great coach, is there's a video of her speaking at a halftime when Tennessee won their 7th national title, the Lady Vols with Candace Parker. And they're playing North Carolina, Ivory Latta, North Carolina, the number 1 team in the nation the whole time. And it's on YouTube. You can watch it. Pat Summitt talking to her players, and she's hyping them up. She breaks down, Tennessee's trailing by 15 at one point and comes back to win. At halftime, she breaks down the adjustment. She basically said, look, the way the refs are calling the game, don't go for a rebound if you miss a shot. Just get back on defense, or just try to get back. She basically told them to avoid the physicality under the basket because she didn't want her players getting in foul trouble, and the adjustment worked. Rick Barnes is going to have to do that on defense. If, don't focus more on trying to get the rebound than contesting the shot on defense. And on offense, once the shot goes, try to get back on defense and don't try to go for too many offensive rebounds. You got to adjust that way if they're calling ticky-tack fouls, right? That's just the rule.
Yeah, let me ask you this. What was the backdoor screen alley-oop? Who was that thrown to? Was that Meshack in the Florida game?
No, that was Opera, I believe.
Okay, so my question is this for you. If Tennessee's in a tight game, does Rick Barnes have the cojones to make that sort of call, which is kind of like throwing a deep pass in football, as opposed to just playing his straight up offense? In a tight game late, does he have the willingness to make that call? I don't think he does, which goes back to my Houston point. I think they lose a close, tight game against the Cougars.
I think he does. I mean, he made it in the SEC tournament. I think Rick Barnes has the cojones to make that call.
Yeah, but that was midway through the second half. He wasn't making any of those calls.
Well, I mean, against Houston, you're not going to want to do that because Houston's athletic enough. I think Tennessee's going to want to grind it out against Houston.
I'm just saying be aggressive in general.
Okay, yeah. I think he'll have the cojones to be aggressive. Tennessee, his Zakai Zeigler is his favorite player that he's ever coached, and he's the most aggressive player he's ever coached.
Oh, that's true. Stat of the day is right now, and it's brought to you by our fantastic friends at the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Stat of the day.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, what's our stat of the day, Caleb?
After Zakai Zeigler became Tennessee's all-time single-season assist leader recently, he also became the 4th player in SEC history to reach 700 assists in a career. joining Johnny Darden, Kareem Reed, and Sean Tuohy. Johnny Darden is the player whose single-season record at Tennessee, Zakai Zeigler, broke. Johnny Darden, Dave, was passing to Bernard King and Ernie Grunfeld. Do you know how impressive it is to break that single-season record?
Yeah, Johnny Darden was really, really good. And Zakai Zeigler did it without a great – he didn't have a guy just to dump it off to down low. I believe that he made a lot of those plays. So I'm glad you pointed that out. As you know, it's one thing to be John Stockton and you can just drop it into Karl Malone, the pedophile. But it's another thing to be able to create and distribute. And he was able to do that. Portions of the program brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. Anybody that joins the channel, just $4.99 a month, you will receive a Hound Dogs gift certificate. If you haven't received yours, go ahead and if you don't care, drop my email in the chat and we will get that out to you. It is incredibly difficult to run people down on YouTube because we don't have your contact information. So all you have to do is email me. I'll get your address and we'll drop that gift card in the mail. Please hit the thumbs up button. Hit that like button. We greatly appreciate that. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Coming up, I got a problem with what Nico Iamaleava said. And Caleb doesn't, but we'll get to that. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Buy an experience like no other. I've got my Jeep. I absolutely love it. Got an incredible deal, and the buying process was super easy. I can't begin to tell you how pleased I am that I purchased my vehicle at Ted Russell Ford. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Parkside Drive and on Kingston Pike. They take pride in knowing that you love your car as you drive off the lot. It's phenomenal. Check them out. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Parkside Drive and Kingston Pike. 2 minutes. Nico, expecting things, not earning things. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, off those.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, welcome back. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. So, Caleb, let me ask you this, and that is, when is the last time the SEC tournament champion advanced past the Sweet 16? There's a stat of the day. We talked about it this morning. You should know this.
Yes. Well, you said they were the last one to make a significant run, so I guess it's them then, since you kind of gave away the game. I was going to test if it was somebody else, but so Auburn 2019 was the last one to win the SEC tournament, and no, Alabama won the SEC tournament in 2021, and they made the Sweet 16.
Well,
you said
okay. The last SEC tournament champion to advance past the Sweet 16. Yes, was Auburn in 2019. 5 of the last 6 went no further than the Sweet 16.
Yeah, Auburn went to the Final Four. Alabama went to the Sweet 16 in 2021. Okay, that makes more sense. That they went no further. Yeah, Tennessee was the champion in 2022, and they got bounced out in the second round, I believe, getting upset by Michigan. Alabama was the tournament champion in 2023, which was the Brandon Miller year. Again, they had made the Sweet 16. Last year's tournament champion was Auburn, and then they got bounced out in the first round.
All right, here we go. What the H? Nico Iamaleava says he expected to win a NATTY, a national championship. This is put out on The Juice, which is a creative produced by Tennessee's public relations arm. So, and Josh Heupel saying that's the standard. Well, we all agree with that, but I had a problem with his choice of words. Am I being too picky? Maybe it's What the H, Dave. What the H, presented by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler.
What the H?
Wow, I've never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, if I'm being too picky on the verbiage, call me out on the message board. Caleb, feel free to call me out. But Nico Iamaleava said he expected to win a NATTY. I got a problem with that verbiage. And the reason I have a problem with that is you're talking about a guy that needs to be a better leader. Tennessee has not hidden that fact at all. A more vocal leader. And being a more vocal leader means putting together off-season workouts. It means being an Al Wilson or being a Peyton Manning that put together off-season workouts. That's what Nico Iamaleava needs to be doing. He doesn't need to go back to California this summer. And if you want to do a 3 or 4 day weekend, that's fine. He doesn't need to take Mike Matthews or whoever he selects to LA with him. He needs to be at Tennessee putting together voluntary, involuntary practices that can certainly benefit the skill position players and can benefit linebackers and the secondary and defensive backs. But it can also, to some extent, help the linemen too. The summer is huge. In other words, I expect Nico Iamaleava to be on campus leading those workouts. And if he's not, then he shouldn't expect to even make the college football playoff. I just got a real problem with that verbiage.
Well, I set up the poll question based on your issue. So Nico Iamaleava saying he expected to win a NATTY shows delusion or moxie? And you're saying it shows delusion to a certain degree.
Well, yeah, I think it does show delusion because listen, Tennessee is not going to win a championship running this 12 personnel stuff. The 2 tight end look I thought was very, very good coaching at the time because they needed that. But why couldn't Nico get the ball out quicker to overcome the offensive tackles early in the season? Why couldn't he? Why, go ahead.
The receivers weren't getting open either.
Okay. Well, again, that speaks to what was your preseason or off-season work like? I mean, because there was enough talent where, I mean, other than Brew McCoy being not as explosive as previously, there was enough talent to maybe not replicate 2022, but come way closer than they did.
No, because Josh Heupel forced Brew McCoy out there as the number 1 wideout, and that slowed everything down. See, I totally disagree with you on this. I love what he said. I'm going to give the real quick quote and then talk about it. He says, quote, "Man, I expected a natty. I'm not going to lie. I came up short. And yeah, man, it was a bummer, a hard loss to take. I think it just motivated the whole team and all of us as a whole to go out and get one this year." I love that quote. Nico setting the expectation for himself. And Nico, I didn't want to hear a guy come out and say, yeah, we took a good step last year. I don't want to hear that. Okay, you're in your 5th year under Josh Heupel, and Nico Iamaleava is a $2 million man. So if he came out and said, oh, we took a good step, we're doing this. Nope, no steps. No steps. You're there. You're a $2 million man. And so I love what he said. I'm a huge fan of it. And I also think that, look, I mean, don't you think you're nitpicking on this point? You say he needs to do off-season workouts and, practices with the players when the coaches aren't around. One, we don't know that he's not doing that, but more importantly, I don't think you can shove aside the whole going to California with Mike Matthews. I mean, he knows Mike Matthews is going to be his go-to guy. And what does he say? Let's go to California. Let's work out together. And you can be my go-to guy. And we can establish some chemistry.
Yeah. He needed to be on campus working with all the receivers. I'm sorry. David said, could Nico be a Vincent Yarbrough? Wow. That, a guy who has all the physical ability, but doesn't have the assertiveness. I'm not ruling that out. I think we'll find out pretty quickly this fall.
I think so too, but we don't. And we're hearing, I'm hearing some conflicting reports. Sources I've heard from you, funny enough, and you've heard them too, is what I'm saying, is that sources close to the program are saying that Nico doesn't have that moxie. But then I know some players are talking about it, not like to be the good guy. They're honestly speaking with you, and they're saying, no, he does have moxie. And
yeah.
So
no, I've publicly, they're piling on. They're saying that he needs to be more of a vocal leader. That's what you do when you're trying to inspire someone to greater heights. And I get that. But what I'm told behind the scenes is that he has leadership ability, that he's a dog and all that. But I have my doubts. I mean, the people I'm hearing from have not won a national championship. So maybe they don't truly know what it takes to win a national championship.
Let me ask you something crazy. And this is a little weird. And you can tell me if I'm sounding like the boomer here. But the whole story of Nico reporting to practice and reporting to like team meetings in pajama pants last year?
Yes.
Does that give off a vibe of I don't want to be here? You think it does?
No, it gives off a vibe of everything's chill. Everything's fine.
Like, because I'm guessing, like, my guess is like in meeting rooms, not like in meeting rooms, Peyton Manning probably went in with like a buttoned up shirt and some nice jeans, maybe tucked in with the belt, didn't he? Like he went in business casual, didn't he? To meeting rooms.
Well, or at least in team gear. I don't know why you're wearing pajama pants. If here's the issue, is there isn't another leader on this football team that is like a Manning or is like an Al Wilson. Maybe Arian Carter. I've heard that he is a great leader, but I think that's throwing a lot on him. The issue is it has to be Nico because there are no other candidates. And it has to be Nico because the Vols need to be explosive offensively. The bottom line is it has to be Nico, Caleb.
It does have to be Nico. By the way, it could be Boo Carter. That dude's talking. And he could be the leader. But you're right. I'm not so sure that it's not going to be yet, though. I mean, again, we're not hearing the best things about his leadership publicly over the last month or so. But again, see, you and I look at this totally differently. Okay, so he worked out with Mike Matthews in California. You say he needs to be on campus. He was maybe at home with his family for a few weeks, and he decided, hey, I want my receiver out with me so we can practice our chemistry together. And they just kind of agreed. What if it went on like that? What if he's gone to Mike Matthews' house in Georgia to work out since then?
What if I'm Chris Brazzell and I'm sitting there while you're working out with Mike Matthews? I'm like, I would like my starting quarterback to throw me some passes.
Maybe they do, though. We don't. What if Chris Brazzell didn't want to go? We don't know. Okay, I know this much. I'll tell you this. I know that Peyton Manning and Joey Kent specifically did workouts by themselves with nobody else around in the 90s. And
extra work.
Yes, to try to establish chemistry. I don't think Marcus Nash and Peerless Price were like, well, why am I not out there?
Well, they could have been out there. You don't have the option to be out there if they're in LA.
Okay, but maybe this was a thing where Nico was home with family and paid Mike Matthews to come out. He wants to establish a real good rapport with Mike Matthews. And for the record, I like that because I'm sorry, Chris Brazzell, you are a complimentary receiver. I like to have a go-to receiver that sucks up most of the catches. I like an Amari Cooper.
I like to have a bunch of receivers. I like to have a Craig Faulkner thrown in there. That's going back, isn't it?
I know. Yep. But Craig Faulkner was there because Corey Fleming was the guy that he surely went to.
Right. Exactly. But the point is there's more than one. And listen, I don't know. Singling out one, I don't know that was very wise.
I like multiple receivers, but I only like 3. I think the best thing David Cutcliffe did when he took over Tennessee in 2006 after 2005, and I've always told you the story, Dave. In 2005 and 2004, it felt like Tennessee didn't know who their receivers were. David Cutcliffe stepped in. We always saw what he did to reform Eric Gage. I think the biggest thing is he said, yeah, we're kind of done with this rotating receivers. Robert Meacham's the go-to guy. No questions asked. And you were covering practice. Isn't that basically what he said at that time?
Yeah. I mean, he simplified things, definitely.
Yeah. And he basically said, Eric, you're going to look for Robert Meacham first. Every single time you throw the ball, Robert Meacham is your first option. Period. End of story. And even if he's double covered, maybe still throw to him. But if he's triple covered, then throw to Jason Swain or Brett Smith. And it worked. I mean, Robert Meacham had one of the greatest single seasons in Tennessee football history.
Dylan says, Dave, the times have changed. You've got 85 young men with a lot of money in the locker room. The drive to go pro isn't as big anymore because of it. Hard to rile the guys up when they've been paid. A lot of truth to that. And you don't have to get paid big time like Nico did, $2 million a year, or James Pierce got $1 million a year, I was told, in $100,000 payments for 10 months. You don't have to get even paid like that. When you're 18 or 19, if you made $100,000 just for signing with Tennessee, you feel like you've made all the money in the world. Do you remember getting paid when you were like 8? I don't know your first job, Caleb, but getting paid, other than looking at your pay stub and saying, what is this FICA thing? The overwhelming thing was like, oh, I've got $400. I am loaded. I am golden. I mean, I can go to the Chinese place down from my dorm, and I can go maybe drink some adult beverages that I'm not old enough to have at the time, and I'm golden. That's what a lot of these players have to be thinking when they get 6 digits, even though you and I know that 6 digits doesn't last very long over the course of 50 years.
No, not at all. And Nico's at 2 million. I get all that. But see, you can maybe make the case that they put more pressure on themselves to do well because of that. That's the thing. And so I do like, I'm enjoying what the message board's saying, because I know this is weird and it's one of the old school things, but I am kind of like, if you're leading a group of people, you should be wearing pajama pants. I do think you should, like, again, if you're like in team meetings, you should dress business casual. If you're the quarterback, you should kind of make the point of, I'm here. I'm kind of an extension of the coach. And
amen. And Nico needs to be the bad guy too. And I'm not sure that he's up for that, to be real honest with you. A vocal leader is one thing, but if he puts together these summer workouts, which he needs to be doing, he also needs to be reporting back to the coaches about who's dogging it, because he needs to be really honest. And I feel like that he wants to be one of the guys.
you're not one of the guys. You're exactly right. You said it. Extension of the coaching staff. That's what he needs to be. Now, pajama pants won't do. I don't know that you need to be business casual, but I will say that you need to at least be in team gear, right? I mean, they give you thousands of dollars of team gear. I mean, how difficult is it to put down the pajama pants, change clothes, show up? Now,
yeah, I agree. And I guess the best way to, and by the way, I don't think he has to be the biggest leader. That's where I break from you, because someone could do it. But I think, like, where we talked last week, Michael Irvin was the leader of the Cowboys, but I guess Troy Aikman was the one that called team meetings and would, like, kind of be the extension of the coach, wasn't he? A lot of times. Like, the coaches would ask Michael Irvin for his advice, but they would use Troy Aikman to parrot what they wanted, didn't they? If that makes sense.
Yes,
and
absolutely. David says, when you're financially secure in college football these days, so what would motivate a lot of these players to get better? I don't know, especially.
I'll tell you what motivates you. More money. Because guess what, Dave? What Red Bull you say in Waterboy? What's the only thing better than a crawfish dinner?
I don't know.
5 crawfish dinners. What's better than $2 million?
$5 million.
Exactly. And guess what? Nico could get more money if he becomes a national star.
Men in pajama pants is like women's butt covered in leggings. Joy trying to. And then Nico's not the guy. Wow. So let's start that poll question. Is Nico? Do you still believe that Nico's the guy? So yeah, we'll throw that out there. Nico. Now this is an old story. This isn't new. So, and I think he's changed his direction there. But Nico wearing pajamas to team meetings is unprofessional and laziness. College athletes are getting paid and should be forced to wear something more presentable at team meetings. I've thought about what I should wear yesterday. I mean, I wear the same thing every day. You don't know what I'm wearing below my waist. It may be slacks, it may be shorts. But I did certainly think about what I should wear when I was doing Will West show on remote yesterday from 3 to 7, sitting in for Tyler Ivins. I mean, that has to go through your head. And I'm sorry, I know I'm a 51-year-old man, but that would have gone through my head when I was 20 or 21. Because I don't know about you, Caleb, but you show up one time way underdressed, and typically doesn't that leave an impression? And you're like, I always want to be overdressed as opposed to underdressed.
Well, I totally agree. And that's where I think, like, I remember this is kind of a weird thing for me, but I'll never forget a couple of years ago, I was covering when I at one of my old jobs, I was covering a meeting at the White House, and I kid you not, Dave, the Senate Minority Leader, the Senate Majority Leader, the House Speaker, the House Minority Leader, the House Majority Leader all showed up in suits and tennis shoes at the White House. And that kind of hit me. I'm like, you should be wearing dress shoes in the White House. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, if you are a politician meeting with other politicians to discuss things, don't you think you should be wearing dress shoes with your suit? Like, you shouldn't be wearing tennis shoes. And it just gave off a vibe of, it looked like they were trying to be cool and, like, you know, fit in. But I'm like, you guys are leaders of the country. You should be wearing dress shoes. Sorry.
Well, and especially, I don't know how often you shop for dress shoes, but the comfortable dress shoes are more expensive. That you can get dress shoes they feel like you're walking on bricks for $50. But those guys could afford whatever shoes they wanted. Nico could afford whatever pants he wanted. It's not like he was. Listen, I mean, the reason people I would think, wear pajama pants or other things like that is because they don't have the money to afford other things. At least I would think that's the case.
No, I totally agree.
Now, this is a great point. Adam says that's where culture comes in, Dave. Saban's guys wouldn't hang their laurels on 100K. I tend to agree with that.
Totally agree.
Now, another great point made on the message board by Dylan. I don't think Nico is the success guy. He's the turnaround guy. Nico made it cool to come to Tennessee again. Either GMAC or Faison will be the one to put hardware back in the trophy case. A lot on GMAC. He's become a bit of a fan favorite, George McIntyre. I honestly believe that he is every bit as talented as Nico from a mobility standpoint. I do think that Nico has a better
better release, better arm, more accurate arm in general, but I think they're comparable in a lot of different directions, in a lot of different ways. In other words, I don't believe that just because McIntyre had 4 stars next to him and Nico had 5, that there's a significant difference. I think they're pretty close based off my own evaluation.
Yeah, I think so too. And then intangibles will end up making a difference in that regard when it's all said and done.
All right. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said, "Hey, Bo."
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Ooh, I like that comment, David. GMAC is Tyler Bray with intangibles and legs. Actually, I will say this. I think McIntyre has a better release point than Bray. I think he gets it over the top. My one knock on Bray was that he was always kind of a 3/4 arm thrower. He wasn't a sidearm, but he was kind of a 3/4 arm. Now he got it out quick. And listen, it was accurate. I'm not knocking him. The guy had a whip. But I think that McIntyre throws it over the top, which you would think because his dad was a coach that coached him to do that. All right, what do you got, Caleb?
On this day in Tennessee sports history, 15 years ago today, 6-seeded Tennessee had to hold off 11-seed San Diego State in the NCAA tournament. They won 62-59. That launched their Elite 8 run, their first Elite 8 in school history. What's relevant about that game, Dave, is Tennessee basketball's defense shut down the one, the only Kawhi Leonard. Yeah, that's right. Kawhi Leonard was on San Diego State, and he was 5 of 15, 0 of 4 from 3, and only had 12 points, did have 10 rebounds and 3 blocks, played well, was a great defensive player, as he always is, had 2 steals. However, J.P. Prince was matched up with Kawhi Leonard, and J.P. Prince, one of the worst offensive players in history, got 15 points on him. And Kawhi Leonard's a 2-time defensive player of the year.
Yeah. Nice comment, Travis. Bray could damn sure whip a beer bottle. Yeah, he could.
He absolutely could. Yeah, and Tyler, look, I've told you guys Tyler Bray is one of the maybe it's unfair to say this, but one of the, like, he's almost Johnny Manziel level of a disgrace. I find it disgraceful when you have that much talent and you just don't care. I find it disgraceful. In
your mind, I want to quantify this for a second. In your mind, he is more talented than you stop me. Peyton Manning. That's a no, right?
No.
Okay. Eric Ainge.
Yes.
I think Eric is slightly more talented.
No, Eric had better intangibles, but Tyler's arm. Tyler might have had the most special arm in Tennessee football history. It's like Tyler and Heath Schuler.
Okay, let me throw Heath Schuler out there.
No, because Heath Schuler was more athletic than Tyler Bray.
Yeah, but I agree with you there. I would take Ainge. I'm a huge Casey Clausen guy, but I would not take Clausen over.
No, I wouldn't either. I think Clausen, again, it's intangibles. A lot of it to a certain degree. Clausen was accurate. He was deadly accurate, but his arm strength and his footwork were slow.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. You're going to love your vehicle from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln. 2 minutes, then coming back, we will get to Deion Sanders says something smart again. And I know you don't want to admit it, but he's got a great idea. We'll discuss who Tennessee should play in the spring game, and it's not Tennessee, in 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vols collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire.
Where do you stand? Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. CityHeatandAir.com. On Off the Hook Sports.
I love you guys in the message board, but you are missing it. You're completely missing out. You think you know the direction we're going, but you don't. See some people suggesting that Tennessee should play Chattanooga for a spring game, that Tennessee should play Austin P, MTSU, or ATSU during some sort of scrimmage. No. We're going bigger than that. It is time to get to Deion Sanders' comments, which we don't say a lot. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Here we go. Deion Sanders talks about spring games, which every coach hates in its current format.
Yes, and I'm going to play the clip for you. Deion Sanders is Colorado spring game is going to be on ESPN2 April the 19th, and he says he's working to try to play another team for the game. Here's Deion's take.
Spring game will be televised. ESPN2 will broadcast spring game on the 19th. We got to sell this thing out and pack this thing, because the way the trend is going, you never know if this is going to be the last spring game. I don't believe in that. I don't really want to condone that. I would like to play the spring. Actually, I like to play against another team in the spring. That's what I'm trying to do right now, to have it competitive. Playing against your own guys kind of get monotonous, and you really can't tell the level of your guys, because, you know, it's the same old. Everybody kind of know each other towards the end. I would like to style it like the pros. I would like to practice against someone for a few days, then you have the spring game. And I think the public will be satisfied with that tremendously. I think it's a tremendous idea. Yeah, I've told those personnel who should understand that it's a tremendous idea.
First of all, I love the fact that Deion Sanders is an African-American wearing a cowboy hat in Colorado. There's something strange about that. You don't see African-Americans in cowboy hats, and you don't see a lot of cowboy hats, I wouldn't think, in Colorado. That's a Texas thing. Anyway.
Well, Colorado is the old West, though, outside of Denver.
Yeah,
particularly. So.
That's true, I guess. But I wonder if he takes that from his Cowboys days. But anyway, I still think that Jerry Jones wants him to be the head coach of the Cowboys. But Tennessee should totally take Deion Sanders up on this and say, we'll play you in a spring game. Let's do this. And for those in the message board, you know I love you, but don't think of this small. Don't think of Austin P. Don't think of MTSU. Think of Virginia Tech. Think of Clemson. Think of Georgia Tech. There's some history there if you go back to the old SEC. Or think of Colorado, something that's sexy. However you do it, just do it, because you have an opportunity to have a true event. You have an opportunity
to be ahead of the curve. Now, the NCAA might step in and say, you can't do this without us condoning it. But really, it seems like Tennessee is able to sue the NCAA at any given moment and win. So why not sue them again? You're not allowed to make money on your spring game. Caleb, this would be absolutely huge. If you played Virginia Tech or Clemson or Georgia Tech, you would not just have 40,000 in there, as they're going to limit it to 40,000 this year. If you wanted, you would have 100,000 people in there. Amen, Nathaniel. North Carolina would be nice. I mean, why has this not been done? Because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You've got two avenues here. You're at a crossroad right now in March 2025. In 3 years, you're either going to play other teams or you're not going to have a spring game, because all the coaches absolutely hate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The coaches do absolutely hate it. I'm going to give a little more news before I give you my thoughts. Fran Brown, the Syracuse coach, who, by the way, was a candidate for Coach of the Year last year. He took Syracuse 10-3. He just tweeted at Deion, "We will come to Boulder for 3 days."
Yes.
Now,
yeah.
Think about, there are some drawbacks before we talk about the different ways to make the spring game work, but think about what Fran Brown is saying. Why did he say Boulder for 3 days, Dave? Because they want to recruit. They want to recruit. They want Syracuse to come down and recruit the Colorado players. And in this era of transfer portal,
and he can also sell to his prospects that you get to go get stoned as a bat legally.
That is true, which would actually help recruit for Colorado, funny enough. But then so here's the flaw with that. And here's the only problem. Colorado comes to Knoxville, Tennessee goes to Boulder. I don't know. You do it, you are going to have some fear of contact when it comes to recruiting in the transfer portal. Like, what happens if Colorado comes to Knoxville and Deion starts talking directly to Tennessee players that maybe flirted with the transfer portal, i.e. Ricky Gibson?
Okay, well, that is a very fair point. So you need to be particular about who you're picking. And that could be tough for Josh Heupel, because I don't think he trusts his own mother. So that could be difficult. He's not a very trusting person. But you would have to think that he's got a relationship with, I would hate to see it stay in the SEC. I'd want to see it be somebody different. But just for instance, he has a relationship with Levy at Mississippi State, right? So he has to have other relationships. I would want to go outside the SEC and do something outside the norm, but he has to have other relationships where he could do that. David throws in there, I think this is a great point. It doesn't have to be a typical game. I have a scenario play 10-minute halves. First half is the first teams and second half is the second team for each team. Listen, the final score doesn't really matter. It's just a way to get your guys juiced in the offseason.
I got something really fun. I got a really good idea, Dave.
Scares me.
Put some value on this.
NIL it. Oh, did I steal it from you?
Yes, NIL it.
Yes.
NIL it. So here's what you do.
If you win, every player gets $50,000.
I'd go a little bit further even, not just the players. The two schools they play on a neutral site, because do you do a spring game? Like, who gets to host a spring game? Do you alternate? Do you do 2 spring games, one, or do you do neutral site?
I really like what the NFL does when you practice against other teams.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you have a scrimmage on Saturday. Now, there's not all the pomp and circumstance of a true game, but I wouldn't mind if I'm just throwing teams out there. If Georgia Tech and Tennessee practiced against each other for a week and then culminated with a spring game.
Okay. I could see that, but the question is where?
Chattanooga. No, I'm kidding. You can do it.
Okay. So that's what I mean. Neutral site. Neutral site it, NIL it. Here's how you do it. You're going to sell this thing to TV, right? They're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Are they not?
Oh, definitely.
You're going to sell tickets. The revenue from whatever you sell to the network and all the revenue, 100% of it, the ticket goes to the winning team. The ticket revenue goes to the players. The television network revenue goes to the school. So they both make some money that they can use to spend on players going forward. So they both benefit.
Let me throw this at you. What if, it's 35 degrees in Tennessee. What if you said to the Tennessee's players, we're going to go to South Florida, not South Florida, the area, South Florida, the school, and play Alex Golish? I mean, that's a recruiting area. Yes, Travis, you could go at Powell High School, and I would love that as an alum with my PhD, Powell High diploma. But I like my idea a little bit better. You go to Tampa for a week, and you make it almost like a bowl week. Because with the college football playoff, you don't really have a bowl week and all that pomp and circumstance anymore. This is a way the bowl committees could actually stay relevant.
I love this. Let's I wrote out hot or cold.
We've done a great job of fleshing this out.
Yeah, let's hot or cold the different ways we could do the spring game with a different team.
Okay.
I think that's better than the hot or cold I suggested earlier. So
okay. So what you're gonna pick the teams, or
I'll lay out the scenarios we just said, and then we'll talk if we're hot or cold on it.
Okay, go.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you. Go.
Wait, you're not going to give me the hot or cold element, man? I love the hot or cold element.
It coming in.
Oh, that's right. You did play it coming in. Okay.
Lord.
All right. First one. And we probably both disagree on this, but or we probably both are cold on this. Keep the spring game as is. Cold, right?
Cold. Because it's going away if they keep it like it is.
Okay. Second, a game against a no-name FCS school that would be your typical like FCS game during the regular season.
No, I don't.
Cold.
Like I don't like that.
Okay. Traveling on the road to a mid-major that, like USF, that is a mid-major but is in a fertile recruiting ground for a spring game.
That's hot.
Yep, I'm on board with that.
Bowl games. Okay, how about this? First, two high-profile programs playing each other, and the winner gets NIL cash as an advantage.
30 seconds. I'll tell you what I think about that. Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Hot or cold?
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. What do you got, Caleb? Oh, no, you already said it. What was it?
Yeah.
Say it again.
Play a high-profile team, and you play for NIL.
That's
money.
hot.
That is hot. That is hot because here are the this is what's so great about this idea. And did I come up with it? Yeah, I think I did. That's why I love the idea. Caleb comes up with it as pure trash. No, I'm kidding. But Caleb has a lot of good ideas. As a matter of fact, he was ahead of the curve on you should just throw the SEC tournament. Here's what I love about it. It motivates your second and third team more than it motivates your first team. Why? Because your first team's already getting paid. And we are talking about a lot of cash. What's 50,000 times 85? That'd be somewhere in the realm of, I believe, about 425,000. So,
which if you sell out a stadium, you're going to more than make up for that.
Yeah. So that's a significant amount for a second and third stringer. That's not a significant amount for James Pierce or Nico, but that would make those guys work harder. And maybe you even have an offensive and defensive MVP that gets $250,000. I love everything about this idea.
I'll take it further. Bowl games start agreeing to host these high-profile NIL games.
No, I said that earlier, that I firmly believe that bowl games should be involved because the bowl committees don't have anything to do anymore. Portions of the program.
I got one last one, and you tell me what you think about this. The game is the big part of the revenue. The day before the game. So we're talking Saturday's the spring game, right?
Yes.
Friday, you have skills challenges, and each school puts an individual out in a skills challenge. And for every skills challenge won, they get a little bit of NIL revenue for that player and for that school.
I love it. And especially if you have two different teams, because they'll show out. Listen, if you did a skills challenge right now, I've heard that suggestion. There's going to be a lot of guys that dog it. I'm just going to be really honest with you. I mean, they're not going to care. They're not, and they don't want to run the 40 necessarily. because it could be held against them. And for those that don't know, you train for the 40. It's almost a different sport than football. So when they run a 4.3 or whatever, they're probably in football speed actually run a 4.5. But yeah, so I mean, your first two steps are supposed to be so long you almost fall down. You won't fall down in Sports Treasures because there's too many good things to prop you up. Carrying over 5 million Sports Treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates on Facebook. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook, right down below. Also, if you're in the shopping mode, we suggest Rick Terry Jewelry Design. I'll tell you more about Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design as we get to 4 downs. And it's
real quick to wrap this up, though, before we get to 4 downs. Sorry, I just have to point this out. For Ann Brown at Syracuse, if they do play Colorado, though, just watching that game is going to give Tennessee a huge advantage, watching Syracuse when they open the season against each other.
Why? Go vanilla. Are you telling me that they're not seeing some sort of practice tape already in this day?
I don't know. The way they're all being secret, it doesn't sound like it, but
I mean, Tennessee's is going to be on national television. 4 downs brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
Come on, guys, it's game time.
4 downs. Can you count? 4 downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, we're going to compare March Madness to the college football playoff now that we've had a season to consume that and the 12-team version. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, I can't bring the other bed down, so there we go. I'll get tech support here. But anyway, we'll get back to Cooper. 12 versus 68 teams. Which is more appropriate, Caleb?
So, yes, and we're comparing the college football playoff to March Madness, 12 versus 68. This makes March Madness. This one favors March Madness because of the excitement, but it hurts the college basketball regular season. How about that? But yes, 12 versus 68 is 68 does favor a tournament with 68 teams. Is going to be more favored naturally.
Well, no, I mean, to me, they're pretty. I would take 68 over 12 for a different reason. I really felt like there were only 3 teams that could win a national championship in the college football playoff in the 12-team tournament. And that would be Ohio State, Georgia, and in retrospect, Notre Dame surprised me, but they had a pretty easy path. So I think there are 2 or 3 teams that realistically can win the college football playoff. I think there are 30 or more teams that can win the NCAA tournament. So I will say that the 68 is a more appropriate number, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. It makes sense for each of their sports pretty much, if that's the best way to put it.
But I mean, technically, a 4-team playoff probably got the job done, right?
The BCS got the job done. Sorry,
Mays
you guys
here. Hit like and subscribe.
You're right. All right. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. 2nd down.
All right. 2nd down, the scheduling of both tournaments with byes separated by 2 weeks around the holidays and college football playoff. I don't know that there's an incredible difference in the scheduling. When I think of March, I think of basketball. When I think of the end of the year, I think of football.
The scheduling favors March Madness significantly. So it's 3 weeks. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the first 2 weeks, and then Saturday and Monday, the final week. College football playoff tried to have their cake and eat it too, where they tried to have a playoff. They gave the byes, but they also still wanted the bowl games. So you had the first slate of games right before Christmas. You had the next slate of games on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. People can't travel twice. Then you had to wait 2 weeks for the semifinals. Then you had to wait another 2 weeks for the national title. So the games would happen. Then you'd forget about it because nothing's happening. Then you come back and care about it again. Like, oh, yeah, there's a college football playoff game coming on.
Well,
March Madness doesn't do that.
And to your point, they have to compete against what?
The NFL playoffs.
Yeah, that's.
And you're not going to win that.
Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler before we get to 3rd down. Looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com.
Tennessee Center, Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
Give me 3rd down, Caleb.
All right, so 3rd down. the home field advantage in the college football playoff. I think this is something that favors the college football playoff over March Madness because it keeps something to play for, pretty much, relatively speaking. I think this is what makes the women's NCAA tournament better than the men's. I've told you this before, Dave. If you gave the top 4 seeds in each bracket home court advantage their first weekend, wouldn't that be so much better for the regular season of college basketball if you knew that's what you're playing for?
I'm up for that. I'm up for that. I like that idea. What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
What's 4th down there, Caleb?
And this is what makes March Madness more entertaining. Upsets are more likely in college basketball. March Madness is exciting for all the wrong reasons because the play is poor, the officiating is terrible, the coaches overcoach, but it leads to wild upsets that everybody likes to see. And the truth of the matter is there's nothing you can do in college football to increase the likelihood of upsets. They just don't happen at the same vein. Boise State, if they get into the playoff, Dave, you and I both agree, they may win a game. They're never going to make it all the way to the championship game. It won't happen.
Well, no, you're right. And I don't think the 12th team you're in, or for that matter, the 8th or 9th team has a realistic chance of winning it all, right?
Well, Ohio State was the 8th team this year, but they were really the 4th best team. It's because that's stupid seeding, the way they seed the tournament. They're like 4th or 5th, but they were technically the 8th seed because, you know, the 3 conference champions had to be higher seeds, even though we all knew Ohio State was one of the best 3 teams of the nation going in. So, but I agree to a certain degree. I mean, there's such a drop off in college football, and that's why a playoff makes more sense for college basketball than college football.
Okay, so we've got a special Colorado 5th down. What do you got?
Yes, and the 5th down. How do both tournaments affect their sports regular season?
Well, the college basketball, the NCAA tournament, it destroys the regular season.
Wrecks it.
Yeah. Now, you and I may differ. I don't think a 12-team playoff destroys it. I still think you have to be right at a 10-win team. There were some 9-win teams that were flirting with making the playoffs, but pretty much have to be a 10-win team. You win double digits in a major conference like the Big Ten or the SEC, I got no problem with you making it. So I don't think it overly adversely affects. Those are 2 what were those? Adverbs back to back. I don't think it affects the regular season as much as you. Am I right?
Here's what it did. It turned college football into it turned the regular season from a double elimination tournament effectively to a triple elimination tournament. Where it used to be you lose 2, you're out. Now it's you lose 3, you're out. Does that make sense? So it's like it went from 2 to 3. And that's effectively what it did. Whether or not we agree with that. My problem is I think college football will always have the better regular season. You're right. This is still what makes college football better. And I don't care about a playoff. This is why I always said, I'm not people that were like, oh my God, let's have a March Madness in December. You're never going to have that in college football. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. There's nothing you can do. I don't care if you go to 64 teams in a college football playoff. But what you can do is have a March Madness in September, October, and November, a full regular season's worth of it. And I think I've lost the battle on the playoff. I didn't want it. I didn't like it. But I will say this. You can at the very least make it better to put more value on the regular season. Like, for instance, you can make home field advantage extend beyond the first round. Honestly, I think home field advantage should go into the second round. I'm sorry. I know it's going to hurt some bowl games, but I think I think Oregon had a right to play Ohio State at home last year after winning the Big Ten.
No, I don't have a problem with that, extending the home field advantage. And it makes it a lot easier for makes it a lot easier for the fans, half the fans at least, to attend the event. And listen, that would incentivize the regular season, wouldn't it?
It absolutely would. Yeah, if you're playing for home field advantage, I mean, I told you guys the falls last year where you might chuck a game to get a lower seed and stuff like that. But what I will say is that, and I think you would agree with me on this, Dave, the NFL, there's never an incentive to throw a game. You might rest your starters in week 17, but you're never throwing a game, right?
No.
You're never incentivized to lose.
Agreed. And we will talk to Tony Jones, former associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee, as he will give us a breakdown of the Vols. Should they be concerned that they went deep in the SEC tournament? What does he think of Wofford? I keep wanting to call them Winthrop for some reason. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer, the Super Dealer.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
What's up?
Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service.
Getting ready to go on this air. Dave Hooker stuff. I'll call you back after.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
There for a moment, Tony Jones, former associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee, looked like he was in the witness protection program because it was really dark. There's the light coming back. First of all, thank you, Tony, for inviting me to Sevier Heights Baptist Church. I know that we weren't able to connect, but great message, and had a fantastic time. And yeah, it's good to get in line with the Lord. That's for sure.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's a very, very substantive church. Got baptized there about 3 months ago. The people are great, and just got to make you a regular attendee.
All right. Will West has me going to his church on this Sunday, but I will certainly be back at Sevier Heights. So let's dig into this, Tony. Tennessee makes a deep run in the SEC tournament, and they obviously played as hard as they could to get to the championship game. Tony, is that good for Tennessee? Iron sharpens iron. Or are you concerned that they could be fatigued?
No, I mean, they tried to win the tournament. I mean, I know a lot of those players. I know they were really focused, especially after beating a very good Auburn team, obviously, the overall #1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then to play Florida. They wanted to win the SEC tournament championship. It didn't happen. Just too many second chance points. I mean, Florida just dominated them on the glass. I believe it was a plus 14, and that's problematic. That couldn't happen. And then we got into foul trouble. And, you know, I mentioned on another show I did earlier, on Sunday after the game. I just think Brian Jarrett, Doug Shiles, and Joe Lindsey didn't control the game. You know, I know those guys. They've ref games that I've coached in, and I just think Brian Jarrett called a couple ticky-tack fouls, and that set the precedent. So if you're going to call it on that end, then me as an opposing coach, you got to call it on the other end. And then, as we see, it was just a parade to the free throw line. Both teams in the double bonus with 10 minutes to go. That's just not good basketball. And it wasn't a recipe for Tennessee to win because they didn't have the type of depth Florida has.
Yep. Agreed.
This is the story. Tony name dropping the refs, saying you guys screwed this up. Tony, I want to ask you about Tennessee's style of play to a certain degree. It seems like they're in a region. It seems like they put all the teams that play Tennessee style in the same region, pretty much. They kind of grind it out, embrace contact. How conducive is that for this Tennessee team that really only goes 7 deep to really try to reach the Final Four?
I think they got to get some transition baskets and not put a lot of pressure on their half-court offense. They're putting a little bit too much pressure on their half-court offense. They run in, that floppy action where, just perimeter guys just coming off pin downs and people are starting to top cover Chaz. They top covering Gainey, when he's on the wing. And if they're not making shots and stretching the defense, that's not a good recipe on the offensive end because Milicic hasn't played well in I don't know how many games, and Felix is just not scoring. He's not that low post threat offensively that we need. So I think we got to score a little bit more in transition, get second chance points, and turn over some people and score off our defense.
Caleb said earlier he thought that this particular game on Thursday against Wofford would be an opportunity for Tennessee to drive to the basket more often. What do you make of this matchup and that assertion?
I watched Wofford play against Furman in the Big South championship game. Played a really good game. Got some good 3-point shooters. They defend. They're well coached, so it's not going to be a cakewalk. The recipe for Tennessee being successful offensively in the half court is scoring the ball in the paint, and scoring the ball in the paint is just not throwing it into to Felix or Igor or Cade. It's ZZ and Gainey going downhill, getting into the paint, scoring on spoon feeds and drop-offs, and them getting offensive rebounds. Those are points in the paint that when they win, when Tennessee wins that battle, they usually win games. So I think that's going to have to be a mindset. And I think their coaching staff, it's a good coaching staff, I think their coaching staff knows that, and they'll be stressing that, especially during these first couple games, because it's all about getting out of this first weekend. If they get out of this first weekend, then all bets is off.
Tony, you brought it up a little while ago, and I want to talk about him. Igor Milicic is not playing well recently. He's not shooting the 3-ball well, which kind of when you recruit a stretch 4 player, that's kind of the one thing you expect them to do. But most notably, is he scared of contact under the basket? It just looks like it, doesn't it?
He's a big guy. I think he's out there doing the best he can. I think, unfortunately for him and for the Vols, is he's been getting into foul trouble lately. And, Rick is an old school guy. If you get 2 in the first half, you're sitting the rest of the half. And if you get 2 with 14 minutes to go in the half, he's got to sit. He's going to sit. And, it puts a lot of pressure on him coming back in the second half to kind of get in the flow. I think Igor is a flow type player. He is a stretch floor, hasn't shot the 3-ball well, but he's capable of knocking down 2 or 3 in a row. And he's also a guy that can score around the basket. And then he does a great job on the defensive glass. I mean, when him and Felix and Meshack are out there all together, they're checking their guys out, and we getting defensive rebounds, people not getting second shots, and then we get into that aforementioned category that I say we got to be really well at, and that's transition offense.
Tony, let me ask you about something that's cropped up on the message board, and that is going into the tournament last year. We all know what happened. They just came up against an insurmountable force in Zach Edey. But do you have more faith in last year's team, which was obviously led by Connect, or this year's team, which seems to be a little bit more of a group effort? Which did you have more faith in heading into the tournament?
That's a very good question, because you got Connect, and then you had Adu and Awaka. You had those guys manning the inside instead of Felix and Milicic. I like this year's team because I think they play well together. I think this team really, really, really plays well together. And then I'm telling you, Jordan Gainey is the sixth starter. I've been saying it all year. He's been playing extremely well, and he's been consistent. And if we can get consistent play, continue consistent play from Jordan and ZZ, obviously, and then Chaz, playing consistent throughout the game, I think it bodes well of us possibly getting to the Final Four. It's going to be tough. I mean, each and every game is going to be a dogfight. That's what the NCAA tournament is about. You throw in the three-point shot that other teams are making. One thing that's key, especially in the first weekend, is we're playing in Lexington, Kentucky, and our fans can get there. So you're not playing out west where you playing against an underdog, and then the crowd that's there for other teams are always going to cheer for the underdog, and you got everybody cheering against Tennessee. Here in Lexington, this first two rounds is pretty good for the Volunteers, as far as the Volunteer faithful getting to Lexington and cheering the Vols on.
I'm looking at the Midwest region, and it almost looks like they just want to create a defense region. And I wonder, do you think that these teams led by Houston and Tennessee are mostly defensive minded? Does that help Tennessee, or does that make it more challenging for Tennessee, who's also defensive minded?
I mean, it's 6 in one buggy, half a dozen in the other. I mean, I know one thing: the officiating is going to be tight. So they got to be able to adjust to the officials. You're going to have guys from different regions of the country in there. It's going to be certain guys that Rick Barnes don't even know, hasn't seen. You got to be able to adjust. I think, if we fortunate enough to get back at Wofford, I think that UCLA game, if they beat Utah State, is going to be a really, really challenging, because, I got a lot of respect for Mick Cronin, a good friend of mine, and we call him Mouse, and he's going to have his team ready to play. And he's a Cincinnati guy. He's born and raised in Cincinnati. That's about 100 miles or so from Lexington. He'll have his people there, and another, like you said, another good defensive team, as Utah State is, and obviously we know what Houston brings to the table: a lunch pail.
That's right.
So Tony, I want to, it's funny you talk about officiating being it's going to be tight, and that's what we talked about. Zeigler driving to the basket would be helpful in this situation, because he could get to the free throw line and draw contact. I thought about this, and I want to know your thoughts on this real quick. I've thought in the past, like something like the dribble drive offense should work in the NCAA tournament, but then I look at John Calipari, and he's only got one national title with the dribble drive offense. So my theory, but then I realized his free throw shooting has always been terrible. So a guy like Zeigler driving to the basket, running what you might call the dribble drive, that can work, right? As long as you're hitting your free throws.
Hey, I'm a big proponent of the dribble drive. I was at Oakland University past 6 years before I came back to Knoxville with Greg Campy, and they knocked off Kentucky last year, and at Johnson University, where I coach right now, we call it open. It's the same type of offense. And I don't know if you guys know, but we at Johnson University made the NAIA National Tournament. We got an at-large bid, first time in school history. So I want to give a shout out to our players and our coaching staff for that. But I love the dribble drive. You got guys that can get from point A to point B via the dribble on the perimeter in Jordan, in Meshack, in Chaz, and obviously ZZ. So I think that would be an offense that could be successful. ZZ is gonna have the ball in his hands, and he's gonna he's the straw that stirs the drink, and he's so intelligent. He's gonna get downhill. He's gonna get through those cracks and crevices whenever he can to create opportunities for himself and for his teammates.
Just for the record, I'm not going to share what Tony Jones thinks about John Calipari, but I know because before Tony and I met, we were at the same establishment, and Tony was outside talking about one said coach on the cell phone. And I walked by him and I was like, that's Tennessee's new assistant, Tony Jones. And I'm not going to share what you said in the interest of the forum. That happened right outside of Roosters. That happened.
Hey, no love lost between us and Cal, me and Bruce and our staffs. We went at it, and we're recruiting. That was first and foremost, and then on the court, and then that 1 versus 2 game still stays in my mind. When we beat Memphis down there in that 1 versus 2 game, and they players tried to intimidate us coming out of the locker room saying, hey, before the game, this is not going to be a game. We're not playing the game today. Let's fight. Let's start a fight right now. And I think Cal had a lot to do with that.
Well, Tony, but wait a minute. You're a Pistons fan. That was y'all's whole style in the 80s. I mean, I saw a thing the other day. It was like Michael Jordan was the star, Magic Johnson was Showtime, Larry Bird was Larry Bird, and here come the Pistons saying, yeah, they all may be great, but I bet they won't fight us.
Hey, Caleb, it just depends on the narrative, baby. And
my Celtics win at least one other championship, if not 2, if Detroit doesn't rise up like they did. But I got a lot of respect for them in the way they won. They might not have been, well, I say not as skilled, but when you talk about Dumars and Isaiah and Vinnie Johnson coming off the bench.
Hey, Hook, that was basketball at its finest, at its pinnacle with Bird and Isaiah and Jordan and Drexler and the like. I mean, that was basketball. I could do without LeBron James and his theatrics right now. I love the 90s brand of basketball.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Tony, I'm actually from Memphis. I'm a hardcore Grizzly fan. I felt like the grit and grind era with Zach and Mark. It felt like we were modeling our style after the Pistons of the 80s when we were doing that.
Hey, you don't forget Tony Allen. I mean,
I love it. We're gonna retire his jersey.
That was a straight gangster right there. He get into you. So I agree. They had a really, really tough basketball team. A team that was right there challenging for an NBA championship.
Is that the guy, Caleb, that hooked up with LeBron's mom? Am I remembering?
No, that would be Delonte West.
That would be the lefty Delonte West from St. Joe's.
But if Tony Allen thought that could help him stop LeBron, he would try to do it. He was that committed to defense.
Delonte needs to step up and go ahead and be LeBron's stepdad, because that to me is the direction to go. All right, Tony. So how deep do you have the Vols going?
I got them. If we get past UCLA, and I'm saying if we get past UCLA, got them going to the Elite Eight, matching up against Houston, which would be that would be a very, very very, very exciting basketball game. And I hope it happens. And if the Volunteers could beat Houston, anything could happen in San Antonio. Well, I'll be right there, Hook. Right there.
Nice. One of the things that I love about Vinnie Johnson, who was the backup guard for the Pistons back in the day, is he was a true pioneer of steroids in basketball. That guy was huge, Tony.
They called him the microwave because he would heat up really fast.
Yeah.
And then he had that slingshot jump shot. And I'll never forget that shot that he hit that sealed our second championship when we beat Portland in Portland that year. It was momentous.
This too, Tony, seems like ancient history, and the younger viewers aren't going to believe this, but there was actually they superimposed a picture of Joe Dumars with his hand. You remember on the front of Sports Illustrated with his hand like against Michael Jordan, like, and the headline is basically, "This guy can stop Michael Jordan."
Yeah,
and that was, boy, if that didn't, man, that had to make MJ mad.
MJ takes receipts, and he obviously took some because he ousted us that following year and then subsequent years, and then obviously we know what he did, winning 6 championships.
Great stuff, Tony. We appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me out to Severe Heights Church, and hopefully we'll be able to help support people about that. Thank you, Tony.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Tony's the best. Tony Jones, former associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee. His appearance brought to you in part by our fantastic friends at Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. Joe Newbert Collision, joenewbertcollision.com. Also want to thank the UPS store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link is right down below. All right. This is the same person that said Tennessee should do everything that they possibly can to keep Rick Barnes on the sideline. If he's talking about retirement, you say, absolutely not. We're going to throw more NIL money at it, at your program, so that you can win at an even higher level than you have. Which, by the way, this is the golden age of Tennessee basketball when you compare it to the rest of basketball history in Knoxville. However, I think this is the year to retire. And I realize that some might say you're telling a man what to do. And yes, I am. I'm making a suggestion. And it's not because I think Tennessee can upgrade. It's because of this. I think there are 2 scenarios. The most likely scenario is that Tennessee loses in the NCAA tournament. Only one team out of 68 wins it all. So they're probably going to lose. It might be in the Final Four. It might not. But regardless, this is at the heart and core of what this team is, at the heart and core of what Rick Barnes believes. He believes in defense. He believes in toughness. He's not going to get a better assemblage of his players than he has now. So you've got your best hand. You've been doing this since 1970. This is the time where you determine if your method really works. He's got 1 Final Four in that time. So the other scenario is that Tennessee wins it all. And Caleb, I know you don't agree with my first assertion, but I think you would agree that riding off into the sunset, John Elway style would be the way to go. Bottom line is, I think it's time for Rick Barnes to retire. Now, I have been told by a source close to him that he's got 3 or 4 more years in him, and that may well be the case, and Tennessee should be absolutely ecstatic if that's the case. However, Caleb, at some point, he's going to need to walk away, and this would be the time to do so. He's put his team together. He's gotten them into the NCAA tournament. I think they'll at least make the Sweet 16. But nevertheless, he doesn't need to keep chasing that. He'll turn 71 this summer.
Caleb, it's time for Rick Barnes to retire. Agree or disagree?
Totally disagree. Like 1,000% disagree. Rick Barnes is in a renaissance of his own college coaching career because this college basketball game fits his style. What does Rick Barnes like to do? Develop players and help them improve on their biggest weaknesses. All of a sudden, out of the sky, the transfer portal and NIL open up, and what happens? Rather than go for the one-and-done 5-star, who, by the way, as I've told, Rick Barnes did that for a while. You want to know the problem with the one-and-done 5-star under Rick Barnes, Dave? The one-and-done 5-star doesn't want to get developed. And I don't even blame them for this. They're basically saying they typically phone it in the way Jamal Lewis phoned in his junior year in college, right? And they're like, if Randy Sanders came to Jamal Lewis in 1999 and said, here's the game here's what you need to work on to improve your game, Jamal Lewis would be like, I'm about to be a top 10 draft pick. How about you step aside and let me do me? Pretty much. That's one and done 5-stars that Rick Barnes were coaching. But one and done 5th-year graduate transfers looking to just take that next step and do the little things they need to become NBA draft prospects. Oh, they're a perfect fit for Rick Barnes. And he's going to keep getting them. May not get Dalton Connect. I might have overreacted when I said Dalton Connect's a dime a dozen, but he did get Chaz Lanier this year. He's going to get another great player next year. This is going to keep happening. This style is conducive to Rick Barnes.
But he loses the core. This is not like the past 2 years where you just needed the Connect, you just needed a Lanier and maybe an Igor. They didn't even really, in retrospect, need Dubar. This is a complete rebuild with Zakai Zeigler gone and Meshack gone. This is a complete rebuild, and you have to instill that mindset. And while you might not agree that it's time for him to retire, I think you would agree with this. Worst case scenario is that he tries to put together another rough and tumble team like he's got this year, and Tennessee struggles for a couple of years, and he kind of loses his mojo in terms of the transfer portal in the NIL. Let's face it. If we were talking about Tennessee had to depend on just Igor and Dubar, it ain't happening this year for him. Lanier came through just enough, but it was borderline. I think you would agree that Lanier might not come through, might not be assertive enough, and Tennessee might stumble down the stretch. I thought that was a real possibility. The worst thing would be if Rick Barnes has 2 or 3 non-NCAA tournament years to end his career, which I think could happen. It's time, as the great John Ward said.
No, it's not. No. And one, losing the core, again, I think we're talking about Chaz Lanier, one guy, Dalton Connect, one guy. What if Rick Barnes, John Calipari's it next year, and he gets like 8 one-and-done graduate transfers who all buy in because they all want to develop because he loses the core? That could happen, and that could be his national title team. We don't know who he's getting this offseason. And here's the other thing I want to point out with Rick Barnes. Winning a national title, Dave, Rick Barnes is one of the few coaches I say this about. Not that he doesn't want a national title. Not that he wouldn't love that. He does. Everybody wants that on their resume. He's not in it for that. He's actually one of the few coaches in it because he likes developing his players and coaching people. He just loves developing them. And I think Rick Barnes is one of the most at peace people you will ever see in sports. He's happy with what he does. I doubt he even drinks. Okay. And he's happy with what he does. Very religious, does what he's supposed to do. I think Rick Barnes does what he needs to do, and he stays about his business, and it puts him at peace. And I think that even if he won a national championship, I think he would keep coaching.
I don't think it would determine it. I'll give you that. I don't think that winning a national championship or not would determine it. I think he already has a pretty strong indication, and I think he will be back for 3 or 4 years. Now, here's the other thing. What would be better for Tennessee? And I don't want to disparage Rick Barnes in any shape, form, or fashion, but you could make a strong argument that if Tennessee doesn't get past, say, the Sweet 16 this year, that Rick Barnes's approach is flawed. Couldn't you? Just one Final Four in, 30 years?
You could, but are you going to say it's less flawed if you get another coach if you're Tennessee? I mean, this is why...
Well, I will say this. Kim Caldwell may never win a national championship, but she's a benefit to Tennessee because of the style she plays. Same for Josh Heupel. It's shown up in recruiting. He doesn't get Nico Iamaleava if it's not for that 2022 season. So, Caleb, I firmly believe that Danny White would like a basketball program that's more marketable. And by that, I mean, goes up and down the court, Kim Caldwell style, plays aggressive, 90 feet of hell or whatever they call it with Nolan Richardson. I do believe that's the direction that Danny White would go if Rick Barnes decided to retire. Now, Dan brings up a good point that I don't want to overlook. Rick Barnes' mission is developing these young men. That's true. And John Calipari does dirty stuff to get players, while Rick Barnes, I think, talks about getting players to church. I think there is a significant difference there. But Caleb, I think it's time.
Okay. One, from Tennessee's perspective, I think there's a couple of misnomers. One, there's this misnomer that Rick Barnes doesn't run tempo. He does if he has the players to do it, and he has done it. Now, he doesn't you're right. It's not like he's not going to be Bruce Pearl or Kim Caldwell. But Dave, we have seen, what did Tennessee do to Texas last year in the NCAA tournament? Remember what they did?
Yep.
They realized we're the more athletic team. We are going to turn up the tempo and go 40 minutes of hell on you. And they knew Texas couldn't keep up. Rick Barnes there's this idea that Rick Barnes is slow it down, grind it out. Rick Barnes is a protege of Gary Williams, who was a protege of Tom Davis, who was the mentor of Bruce Pearl. So, he has worked in these systems and he's very versatile. So it's not like he doesn't run tempo. It's based on the personnel he has. He just doesn't have to recruit for it. Also, I'm going to argue that it's like the phrase, we look at tempo in the NBA, Dave, the way we look at home runs in baseball. We think they sell, but there's some evidence that if overdone, they don't sell. Because look at the NBA. It is as up-tempo as has ever been, and its ratings are as bad as they've ever been. And baseball, when home runs started peaking a few years ago, ratings were terrible still because there were no in-play balls.
Okay, but
I think
wait a second, Caleb. The odds are that a team is going to win a national championship this year that shoots a lot of threes. That is more about spacing than defense. So that's the way the game's being played.
Yeah, I think people think I would argue that's something that favors Tennessee then. If that's the way the game's being played, then Tennessee not doing spacing could benefit, honestly. And it's not like Tennessee doesn't shoot threes. We're out here. They're 8 of 24 per game on threes this year. They're 111th nationally. That doesn't seem like a lot, but there's 400 teams in college basketball. So they shoot and make more threes than the majority of teams in college basketball. And so we're acting like they don't do it. I think Tennessee, I'll just say it. I think they could keep selling tickets as long as they're successful. I think the style, and I criticized it 2 years ago, but Rick Barnes had a really dull defensive team that just couldn't do the stuff he wanted to do. But he's adjusted, and I think his continual adjustment, I think it's good for Tennessee. And this is the big thing. It's SEC basketball. It's not SEC football. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. We couldn't get to it today. But, Dave, why is SEC basketball so deep with 14 teams in the tournament? Because only one of these teams has won a national title. Coaches have won a national title, John Calipari. But the rest of the SEC settled on good coaches. They settled on good coaches who probably aren't great. That's the difference between the basketball and football. Because in football, good you're not settling for good in football, right? If your coach is good, you're firing him. You're going for great.
Work Truck's all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Truck saves you time, less back and forth trips. Trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. They've got cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, anything special like cranes or dump trucks. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Don't risk chancing your future in business on the wrong piece of equipment. They are on Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham for the entire inventory. Go to Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll see you at 10 o'clock Eastern time each and every weekday, live or wherever you podcast. Please make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.